on today's StoryBeat.
If you're an instrumentalist, meaning that you chose an instrument that you love or are passionate about, it's a question of dedication. Make sure that that's something you want to do, and it'll take you where you want to go as long as you provide the instrument the diligence of your soul. Not saying that everything's got to be right, everything's got to be right every day. There's no such thing as perfection, but just provide the love of the instrument if you really love it, the diligence of your soul, and put yourself into that thing.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Making a return for his second appearance on StoryBeat, my guest today is the great jazz and world flutist, Michael Mason. Michael's been playing professionally for more than 40 years. He's led off for trumpeter Arturo Sandoval, had master classes with James Newton, been influenced by Jethro Tull's Ian Anderson, performed with New Orleans Saxophonist Edward Kid Jordan and Chicago's legendary Fred Anderson. He's also collaborated with James Galway and many artists from the legendary AACM organization. Michael's musical influences include Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Eric Dolphy, Sun Ra, and Yusef Lateef. More than a composer and musician, Michael was also a working firefighter for 38 years and is now retired Lieutenant Michael Mason of the Downers Grove, Illinois Fire Department. He was one of the first responders from the Chicago area to fly to New York City after the World Trade Center towers were attacked. You can read more about his firefighting efforts at ricofirerescue.com. Over the past 10-plus years, Michael's taught thousands of recruits at the Fire Academy to become first responders and has taught veterans how to save each other at the scene of any type of tragic incident. Please be sure to stick around at the end of this episode for a special treat. Michael has lent us his beautiful song, Freedom, from his new album, Impermanence. Freedom has also been turned into a music video as a tribute to the people of Ukraine. The video, which can be seen on fireflute.com, has been approved by the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences for Grammy voting in the Best Music Video category, and Impermanence is up for voting in the Best Contemporary Jazz Album category. So for all those reasons and many more, I'm truly delighted to have the renowned flutist Michael Mason on StoryBeat today. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Stephen. It's awesome to be back again. Just to clarify something about that New York thing, we were pulled back. We made it out there 4 days later. So we never got a chance to get there on time, so to speak.
It had to have been really challenging to get there at all.
It was crazy. We were pulled off of that. We never drove your squad units out there, on the road, and it took days. No, we were pulled back, but 3 of my other guys are on another unit made it there as well, and 2 of them are no longer with us. They died of lung problems.
Oh boy! As a result of that,
yes, yeah.
Well, all I can say is thank you so much for your many years of service as a firefighter, and especially for going to New York and spending all that time there. That must have been a really difficult situation for sure.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, we were pulled back. We never got a chance to get there. It was my other set of my guys that made it there. Guys like John Green and Billy Joy and stuff. So I don't want to give misinformation that I had a chance to work on that pile. But a lot of our brothers that were out there that worked on that pile, dedicated. My Chicago brothers, it was something that really bothered me for many years that I would never get a chance to really, get out there and do what I should have been doing. But hey, we were pulled back by our chiefs, and that was it. I guess I had a choice at the time. If I remember right, the chief said, "You go out there, I'm going to fire you." Well, that's politics. I don't even want to talk.
Well, that is politics, but the fact that you served that way for so many years, that is testament all by itself of.
And I started the national program for rapid intervention firefighter rescue in 2001 with a friend of mine. It wasn't that long ago, but I've been doing that for teaching the national programs for over 23, 24 years now, since 2001.
So explain for the listeners what that is and what you do.
Well, we train firefighters how to rescue themselves out of certain situations. 9/11 obviously was not much you can do about it, but we have a lot of fatalities every year in firefighting. Over 100 and some fatalities a year in American firefighters. So that's what I do is we train them certain techniques, maneuvers they can do when maydays are called out, how to move firefighters through, how to get them, how to rescue them, resuscitate them if necessary. But it's a lot of work. But every year in September, at the week of 9/11, I have a national program that takes off in Illinois. It's now at the I moved it several times. It's now at the Romeoville Fire Academy in Illinois, second largest academy in the state or in the Midwest. So.
Well, I thank you greatly for your service. I mean, that's just extraordinary stuff.
Yeah, that's what I do besides getting up every day and playing music and composing, and I'm a lucky man.
Well, so let's talk about that because that's why we're here today. We're here to talk
right.
about your creative process. We last spoke in 2021, just as we were sort of starting to come out of the COVID crisis. And I'm wondering
Correct.
if in the last couple of years, and I know you're always in a process of discovery, have you discovered anything new or exciting since then about music, playing music, writing jazz, anything new?
Whoa, I mean, I have probably written, I don't know when we left. I believe there was it 2 albums out or just one of a series? I have 12 albums out.
I think the last two had not been released yet, the current last two.
That would be Transcendence and this one that came out again, Impermanence.
That's correct.
The first one was Human Revolution.
That's the one that we talked about on the last show.
Probably it may have been, or maybe it could have been part of Transcendence. But Impermanence was released just recently, and that's long done. It's out there and on all the networks that you need to find it. And now I've already written another, maybe 16 or 17 other compositions that we're starting an album series on this series of. That would be 4, 5, and 6 more coming out.
You're just very inspired right now, I guess. Yes.
Yeah, I mean that. Well, I'm lucky. I hear some things. Right. I toss and turn at night, hearing some grooves in my head. Hopefully, when I wake up in the morning, I still remember them. Go down to the computer or the piano and just jot them down a little bit, just on the keyboards, and then I work for the rest of the day when I have the days off. If I'm not teaching firefighters on the days off, I spend most of my days doing the writing, the composing.
And where do you look for inspirations? Obviously, things hit you in the middle of the night, but are there places that you look for inspiration?
I could be listening to a song or something on the radio, or I could be on YouTube. I could be watching television. I'll hear it because we're in tune with that. With soundtracks, things like that. And so they give me this they'll give me a little tip off. I'll hear a bass pattern or something like that, or I'll say, this is interesting. I think I'd like to explore this area. So, I mean, that's what motivates me. Other players motivate me to do better and to create new works.
Both living and those players who are no longer with us?
Living and past, yes. I mean, I've got huge influences.
Who do you think is the most influential over you? Is it Miles?
I believe it's Coltrane and Miles. And man, that's a big question. I have been influenced by so many people, but I'm a jazz player, even though I started as a classical player. So I've been influenced by the streets of Chicago. So the AACM, Coltrane, Miles, those are my roots of not only learning my instrument, but learning the music of jazz and blues, and which then led to more contemporary things, more exploratory things. So,
do you listen to folks like Miles and Coltrane regularly?
Not as much as I used to. After you listen to Coltrane and Miles, Coltrane I used to play every day. I mean, I would just be jamming along with them, just trying to get that flute to get the notations right and everything else. I mean, that was a lot of years of work, along with the Slaminsky thesaurus of musical notation, because he studied out of that book pretty routinely. So I incorporated the flute playing to that, and just every day for me is nothing but scale work and
Really?
modalities. Oh yeah,
Just
oh
scales?
yeah, scales and modes, compositional chord structure. You remember now we got hand pans here, those percussion instruments that make notations. They're a hand pan, you play them with your hand. So
Right.
I have 10 or 11 of those that are in different modalities, which are world music instruments. And I create note patterns and everything out of that. And that creates chord. And from chord, I create movement. From movement, I create the melodies over maybe some of the movements. And then all my musicians stop by and go, "How crazy are you, dude?" And I asked them, "Listen, we gotta jam on this. We're in 7/4, 22/8, or something like that. I play in a lot of different meters, and so my percussion players are over here. My handpan players come by, and my bassist, who is my right hand man right now, I don't know what I do down on G off low. He kind of helps me arrange a lot of the stuff.
When the players stop by, do you already have a composition in mind, or do they help you develop some idea that you may have?
I have the full sketch, the full idea in mind, and then they kind of take it, and start putting their little take on it, which then may change the direction a little. But I try to hold fast to the original conceptualization of what I had.
Do you already have the arrangements in your mind as well, or do you let that flow?
That will change. I usually have the arrangement the best that I can do it, because remember, I'm laying down things by myself,
Hmm.
before the other players show up. And then maybe my bassist will come out, because he helps run the control consoles and stuff too. And we start organizing a little better, like this is the A section, this will be the B section, this will be a C section. Maybe I'll need to adapt a bridge that might be missing,
Hmm.
and I'll
So
go to work at that night.
when you say you lay it down, are you actually laying tracks down on a recording device of some kind, or yes?
Yes, yes, yeah. I lay down the basics off of a workstation, which is a keyboard that creates anything from bass players to symphonic things to whatever. It's a workstation. So that's what I do. I lay it down, and then the guys show up, and I give them the basic sketch of the conceptualization of what I'm asking them to do and to look into. And then from there, a lot of interesting things start happening.
I bet they do. I'm correct in saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, that part of the world of jazz is to go out and play live and improvise and not play something that's already been done, but to do something that's happening in the moment, correct?
Absolutely.
Does
In
that,
my music, there are improvisational areas that I allow players to just explore. When I was with doing a lot of work with the AACM in the clubs, in the small concert facilities around Chicago, this was what we call, I hate to name it this, but it was like more of a out jazz, outside, thinking outside the box. So the music has changed for me, because I'm getting more into a world function of music, meaning I'm incorporating African rhythms with Latin rhythms, and then I'm bringing in instrumentation. Like I play Bowie flutes; these are Chinese flutes, or I'll have rain sticks or percussion. I try to get a world sound, but yet still have a jazz feel and out of things.
are you always seeking out new instruments?
Always.
Always.
Like I said, I mean, I'll hear a guy maybe on YouTube. Or Bill, my manager, sometimes. Hey man, go check this guy out from Nairobi, Africa, and he found it on YouTube or something, and so I'll check it out. I'm going, wow, yeah, thanks, Bill. I think I'm going to look into this. You know, that's that's what it is.
So part of
So
the process of creating new music is to actually seek out other forms of jazz or other forms of music to inspire you.
absolutely. I mean, I don't know any musician alive that's staying stagnant. Well, I shouldn't say that. Any players I know are not stagnant within their own zone all the time. We're in a world of change. That's what impermanence, the album, means, change. And impermanences change. Nothing stays the same. So I always seek out something new, something old, something borrowed, the old saying, right?
Yeah, sure.
Mix it all up. And something out of that comes, it's almost like the Buddhist thing where, something out of that comes the lotus flower, from the
It,
mud, realization.
it's a constant evolution.
Yeah.
And
That's
and
why I love it.
you also have the ability in a song to get into a really good groove. And in life you can get into
Absolutely.
you can get into a really good groove in life as well. But as you're in that groove, you're also seeking to go beyond that groove.
Yes, we're hoping that the groove will create a future, maybe even a future song, or a future movement. You're on a journey when you listen to music, and good players are able to take you there. We're not looking at what we call standards per se, jazz standards or the book of standards. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, Moon River, Night and Day, all that. They have a specific pattern. These are things that are created very spontaneously. You could be playing 18 bars and all of a sudden it would swell into 24. Sometimes you get so carried away, you gotta cut things back. So what we do is we edit to keep movement going. Always the music must go forward. So I just can't take a modality and say, okay, I got 18 or 12 bars of this. We'll go around and do 12. A lot of times what we do is we'll take the 12 on the open, and then when we return, we only got it down to 8. And then we moved it to the next session again. Yet it's still the same piece of music. Now the listener is being moved along, just moved along,
Well,
you
that's
know.
one of the more fascinating things about jazz is that
Yeah.
musicians and composers take one lick and turn it into 1,000 different things. And so
Yeah.
I'm wondering, do you ever play other kinds of music like rock and roll or something like that to then
Oh yeah.
you do?
Do I play rock and roll?
Well, do you
I
play it in
play
order to inspire yourself?
I listen to rock and roll. I listen to old music. Well, my mentors are pretty 60s and 70s. There is a lot of good new music out there in regards to rock and roll, if you want to put a tag on it. Well, I'm not too much into, I'm into finding grooves within grooves, you know.
What does that mean? Explain what a grooves within
Well,
grooves
it's
means.
bass patterns that would repeat but yet move along, and then you can lay something underneath that or over it. You know what I mean? A lot of times, in the 60s it was wide open. Music was wide open. There was anything goes, and producers were and labeled guys, A&R guys were grabbing musicians right off the street,
Hmm.
that were creating these small bands that, whether they were in San Francisco, whether they were in LA, whether they were in Greenwich Village in New York. Back then, man, I wish I was signed back then.
Well, the
But
level of creativity that was coming out of that little tiny group called the Beatles alone was just explosive. And in fact, on this day that we're recording this episode,
they
they
got
just
another,
released a brand new Beatles song
yeah, the AI,
with AI.
of
Yes.
of well, it's a dangerous item, and we're worried as musicians, even as actors and people like that, of how this new technology is going to be used at. But I'm not too much worried about it. But just the music and Santana, Jefferson Airplane, the Allman Brothers. You're talking music that Richie Havens. You're talking about music that was really inspirational and moving, and it was based on grooves. It, I mean, it was nothing that elaborate about it. It was just the way it was done. You know,
Most of it came from the blues and jazz.
Absolutely, absolutely. It was all blues because everybody's listening to B.B. King, Muddy Waters, even the Stones, the Rolling Stones, and the Beatles. Everybody, the English were into R&B and blues music of America,
Big time.
and yeah, well, they knew what to do with it on a different level, and then it was brought back onto us, and we thought it was, little girls and everybody screaming at Shea Stadium.
Does blues influence jazz?
Oh my, oh yes, oh
So
yeah.
it's all becoming one big pot of things, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
A big
You're
gumbo.
absolutely right. And it's a hell of a gumbo. If you get it right, you can make some compositions come out with all that influence. I mean, you can't do it all at one time, but different thing. We hope that our music, you listen to it, every track you listen to has got something different for you.
Well, it does. I mean, I've listened to it a bunch of times. I love to turn it on and I can work at my desk while I'm listening to your music.
A lot
And
of people do. Yeah.
especially because it doesn't have lyrics in it. For me personally, if I have
Right.
music on that has lyrics when I'm trying to write, I can't do it because I hear the words and the words screw up my thinking. But music that has no lyrics to it is fantastic and your stuff is
Yeah, they're
just exactly
begging me
that.
to write songs. People are begging me to write a lyric piece, and I just don't know how to do it. I tell you what I will do. I will incorporate voices soon,
Just as sounds like as other instruments.
just as sounds, but producing vowel sounds. You may think they're words, but they're really not words. And there's a lot of that going on in world music, especially the African music. There's some incredible choir type African music, vocal music that's, I mean, a good example of that would be Peter Gabriel. If you listen, and Peter is another one I love because he has a groove, he has a modality to it, and he's able to take you somewhere.
Look at what Paul Simon did with Graceland.
That's another thing. Well, the African influence was really brought over here through those mucho singers. But that's what we're talking about here. Yes, you're right. If I have to come up with lyrics, I'm afraid. If, what what possibly could I have to say that would be worth?
Michael, there are these other folks in the world called lyricists.
Yeah, I don't. I got enough to worry about. I just. Hey, well, maybe I should call one up. Say, listen, here's a song. Can you put lyrics to it? That,
Well,
that happens all the time.
it does happen all the time.
Like Joni Filato was another one. There was another lady out in California who happens to do a show. Her name is Kathy Garcia. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She has a great jazz show out in LA that I do once in a while for her. And, we were always trying to hook up. She was going to try to do some vocal work for me, but not words, vocal voweling or,
Hmm, hmm.
I mean, and then you got the AACM, which I came up with where you have poetry against jazz chords and things like that.
And nothing wrong with that either.
No, it's
But
beautiful stuff.
but you're using the voice as an instrument with no actual words.
That's what I want to do. That'll be my next endeavor. I'll find my voice, probably vowel something. I'm not going to count on it though.
What is it? I'm curious at the heart of it all. What is it about jazz that floats your boat? Why jazz?
Freedom, the head of a piece or whatever. Well, how I learned it was through a strict formula, Duke Ellington, set compositions. Bird, Charlie Parker I was very interested in, but he didn't get to me the way I think Chet Baker and then Coltrane, Miles Davis. When the notes started to get a little bit more separated, I mean, Charlie Parker. I mean, I used to do that. I would just turn on my flute. I'd be all over the place. But you have to understand, you got to study that. I mean, you have to understand where you're at. You just can't get up on a bandstand in the jazz days in Chicago and just blow anything. They want to know that you know the changes, the chord
Well,
changes.
sure.
And it takes a lot of work. But after a while, it gets tiring. One chord change after another. Bam, 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 bam. You know, some writers would write chord changes like there were no tomorrow. And they're just basically inversions of something else, sevenths and ninths and 13ths. And you'd be like, Jesus, I might as well just, you start discovering a mode that you can stay in that would cover 15 chords that these guys are writing on. And then you play some blues licks or something in there. Chromatic. I studied chromaticism for years. I still do. Just a chromatic scale.
Are you studying it in other artists or in books or at all the above?
I study it in my flute practicing.
In your practice.
Right.
What do you think you've learned over the years about playing flute that you now know and can sort of have mastered that you wish you knew back when you started?
Well, the first problem, Stephen, is I've never been able to master the flute.
Some would say you have.
Well, they do. They say kind things, but I am not a virtuoso. There are some gifts from God. I think I told you last time. I mean, James Galway, these classical players are some, they're just gifts from God. I'm an explorer. In fact, I relate myself closer to guys like Eric Dolphy or Ian Anderson. My flute tone is good. It has a great technique, but it's not James Galway's tone. And every flute player has got their own. Any horn player or reed player has his own personal sound, and that's what you have to do. You learn the instrument, and then you have to find your own voice on it. I mean, that's really
You unquestionably have your own voice. Your voice is your voice. That's
now I do.
yes.
Yeah,
Well, it's just like writing almost anything, writing any kind of
yeah,
books or whatever. You have to work a long time to find your voice.
yeah.
And I think that's true for actors. I think that's true for artists of all kinds. How long do you think it took you to find your voice?
32 years.
Is that all? Just 32 years. Wow. And then
Yeah,
once you found it, was it easy to just slide into it at any time?
no. Every day I get up, there are good days on my flute, and there are bad days, and that's why I'm constantly attending to my facility.
When
Any
you say good
special
days and
occasion.
bad days, you mean the sound coming out of you or your
The
ability to
sound,
play?
it could be anything irritate me, my fingers on, but the sound doesn't work right, or you know, I have very good flutes. My flutes are gold flutes. Not that that makes any difference. I always tell students, I used to teach a few students, I'd say, it doesn't matter about the material. What you do want to stay away from it, like a beginner would come up to me and their parents would rent the flute, and it'd be made out of nickel. And I'd be like, oh, no, you have to understand, in order, if you want this child to continue or to do whatever he wants, at least get a silver flute. You need a base metal that really works, or else they'll just abandon the instrument. Not that everybody wants to be a pro, but my flutes, it took me a long time just to get the right materials together for my own embouchure, my own lungs. What's working for me, my tongue work, all that. It's so individual to every player. It's a lot of work.
What makes the gold flute superior? Why gold?
Gold has a warmer sound. Gold is also drawn thinner. The metal itself is drawn thinner on the instrument. And I'm talking about hundreds of millimeters. Gold flutes are typically between 0.14 hundredths wall to 0.12. I mean, these are very, as soon as you put, your wind into it, you maybe get a response.
Hmm.
Then I have head joints that I have three gold flutes, 18 karat, 14 karat, 18 karat with a platinum riser right by the hole that's got platinum in it. James Galway has, I think the last count I had taught when I saw him on interview at Flute Center in New York, he had 22 flutes already
Wow.
of different metals and everything else. Well, when you make 415 million a year, it's you can about buy anything you want.
This is
But
true.
well, flutes, a gold flute now is close to 35 to $40,000.
My goodness.
Yes,
It's like buying a car.
that's exactly what it is. Buying a car. So if anything, instead of I got an empty garage, instead of having three Lamborghinis, I got three gold flutes. That's about all I got.
So I want to go review the notion of playing because we were talking about, your lungs and your arms and your hands and whether each day has got its own thing going on. But you have to have great ability with your hands and your lungs and your arms to play a flute, I assume. And but I'm curious, all those years, 30 some odd years as a firefighter, you were constantly putting your lungs, your arms, your hands at risk, weren't you?
Yes, I was. Yeah, I breathed in a lot of bad things, and it'll probably catch up with me. I notice, I'm having problems already, but there's a price to be paid for a profession like that in firefighting.
Hmm.
And most of us will acquire one of the big things. Will probably a lot of us will acquire some form of cancers because of the environments we were in. You have to understand. I started in around 1980. Back then, we weren't even. Yeah, we had air packs. We weren't wearing them right. There's a lot of things that we did that were not good. Now today, the modern firefighter is well taken care of. Good clothes, good bunker gear, good air packs. Many times, though, we were breathing smoke.
So that was the sort of the standard of the industry at that point. My question really is what do you do to keep your arms and your hands in shape, and especially when you were working with such heavy equipment all the time? What do you do?
I work out every day, hours in the gym.
Hours in the gym.
Not hours, a good hour workout every day of between weightlifting, dexterity moves, all that stuff. In fact, that doesn't leave me even to this day. I practice a certain amount of time and then I hit my own personal gym in order for me to stay in the relatively whatever shape I have left, which is pretty good considering that here I am at 70. I mean, I'm really blessed, really, when I think about it. Even though there's things that are breaking down,
There's no
but
avoiding that.
no, and that's something I've got to get used to, accept, and it's hard to accept those things. But I
And
don't mess around. I stay physically fit. My spine is gone; it's shot. My neck is gone. I have osteoarthritis and stenosis in a lot of areas. New things are popping up, but I just wake up every day and say, I got to play that flute. That's what I want to do.
does the music lift you out of your physical pain?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. I think the heaviest thing I take is Advil. I mean, when the pain gets really bad, I have just what they call a mild NSAID. It's not an opioid or it's not a barbiturate of any type. It's called, was it Delphinic or something? It's for my C spine that got messed up.
Was that messed up from firefighting or playing flute?
Firefighting.
From firefighting
Oh, everything from firefighting.
and
Yeah,
from carrying heavy equipment,
yeah, and
hoses.
getting beat up, carrying that air pack on your back for long periods of time every day for 30 or 40 years.
That'll do it.
Oh, yeah, and being bent in different things you wouldn't believe, carrying ladders that weigh 300 pounds.
That had to have kept you in really good shape to begin with, just doing all that heavy
I was in
labor.
decent shape. I was in very decent shape, but again, I'm not a very big guy. Being a little just shy of 5'8". It's most of my other brothers in the fire service were pretty big guys. They lift weights. Some of these guys were champion weightlifters.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, you want to be able to carry Mrs. Jones down that ladder when you need to.
I guess that makes a lot
And
of sense.
I've had a few of those. So
No doubt, over 40 years, you have had to have had a few. I'm trying to
you
link the
know,
two together so that I understand it better because you're very unusual. I
yeah,
mean,
that's hard
I do
to say,
not know too many or of too many musician composers in any form who are also firefighters. So that's
There's
unusual.
a great trumpet player in Chicago. He's a Spanish guy, and he used to do what I did. He was a jazz player, but he was more of a standards player. But you have to understand, my guys put up with me practicing my flute in hose towers, fire hose towers, early in the morning and late at night. They would just hear me up there, and they just say, hey, can you ever play a song? You sound like you're like there's nothing but birds up there. Because I was always practicing scale work and shit. No, I'm serious. You could ask all my firefighter brothers. I mean, they thought it unusual, but I think they admired it to a certain degree, but they knew that I had two heavy profession and two loves, and that was firefighting and music.
And how much do you think being a firefighter has influenced the way you've composed jazz? Has it?
Some of it, I think only the biggest one is the Our Lady of Angels CD, Angels of Fire, because I was inspired to write that for burn camps for kids because I survived the Our Lady of Angels fire in Chicago in 1958. So, and a lot of people don't know that, but I was just a first grader. But I remember the day enough that it bothered me for a long time. But so I made a memorial CD to the 95 kids that in my school that died.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's a very famous fire. December 1st, it's coming up the anniversary of it again. So December 1st, 1958.
So you created enough music to fill a CD as a tribute and inspired by that fire.
Yeah, 14 songs. It's out there. It's always on the internet or it's on our website. When you buy the CD, I don't get any money for it. It all goes for the burn camps for kids for Illinois, the Illinois Fire Safety Alliance. It's a camp called I Am Me. I Am Me. And it's for burn kids that get burned. And it's a summer camp that they get to go to and spend time with people with the same injuries and stuff like that. And I used to go out there a couple of times and just, I mean, it really is a pretty cool place.
And so where do your other song ideas come from? From life?
Life, yeah. Sadness, joy.
Just in this new CD, which I very much enjoy, Impermanence, you have very curious and interesting titles like Goes Around,
Yeah.
Comes Around, Contemplations, Me to You, Dawn of a New Day. Those are all titles from this new CD. And I'm
Right.
curious, where did the titles come before the songs, or did the songs inspire the titles?
Sometimes, either way, sometimes I'll have the title and sometimes the song will inspire the title. But I'm heavily influenced through spiritual development.
Mm.
Spiritual development, and I enjoy a lot of religions. But I mean, I was raised a Catholic, but a lot of this stuff is a lot of heavy studying I've done.
I find your music very meditative.
Yeah, and it's meant to be.
It's intended to be meditative. And
Yes,
and you, as we've talked about already, there are many different grooves that happen within the music itself. And then those grooves grow and expand and go into different places. And I
right.
find that very meditative. Now you have spent, now you're telling us for years and years and years, you spend your days doing scales, which is meditative. Um,
Well, it's not. It's somewhat meditative. So,
do you ever get bored?
oh yeah, but you got to push through it. You got to push through the boredom because from the boredom of maintaining the facility, from that emerges consistency.
Is that then muscle memory that you're creating?
Exactly, just like firefighting. Firefighting is muscle memory. That's what it is.
Explain that. Firefighting is muscle memory. What does that mean?
Oh yeah, we train and we drill and we drill and we drill and we drill. So we're going to pull a line. We're going to pull a line off the engine. We got three guys here. They're going to pull the line. One guy opens the nozzle. We drill on all that. We drill on it. You're going to do a search. You're going to search for a civilian. All right, one guy goes in the door. He's got to put his tool in a certain way. He's going to travel along the wall. You stay left. I go right. All the commands and the structure of everything. Very disciplined work because I'm a disciplined guy.
I guess so.
My
You
wife
sure are.
sometimes, well, my wife sometimes can't stand it. She'll say, "Don't worry, I know what your day is going to be like, dear. You're going to wake up, take a shower, get the coffee going, go." She knows my whole day. Practice, work out. If you got to go to work, I'll be up at 4 in the morning. 4 in the morning, I'm up and I'm doing my thing. I got to hit the gym and then I got to go teach firefighters. Practice, go teach fire, come back. That's what I do.
Do you also get up at 4 in the morning when you're doing late night gigs?
No, I don't do gigs anymore.
You don't do gigs anymore, just recording.
No, just recording right now. Oh, we're going to be doing gigs again because I'm not ready. It takes a lot of money. And if I'm going to do it, it's going to be big time. I'm not, this is the music that's going to require a stage performance.
And touring.
Yes.
And touring is challenging in many different ways, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I'm not looking to tour like, 150 days. I'm just talking, man, just give me 9, 10 dates a year and I'll go wherever you want to go. But somebody's going to have to get me like about $10,000, $15,000 just for 1 week. Rehearse a group of 9 musicians because you have to pay them well to do this music. This music is, and they love it. They want to do it. Trust me. If I had 9, 10 dates, we're working on it. Bill's working on it.
I have no doubt you'll get there, and I hope that if you ever wind up in Pittsburgh, you'll let me know so that I can come watch you in person.
It's a city. If it's a city, I gotta go there.
If it's a city,
you never know where this thing's going to take you. And I hope I live long enough that I can get a series of 10, 15, 20 dates a year to bring this music to people. It's very hard. The only other avenue we have now we're working on is trying to get the music video, where we rent a studio, a big movie studio, and get that. That's probably the way to go to avoid the rigors of the road, the constant. There's a lot of musical instruments. I mean, I'd probably need at least a 3/4 length truck
for the instruments.
just for the instruments alone.
Wow.
Oh yeah, at least 100 instruments.
At least 100 instruments.
Yeah, of flutes, handpans, cellos, violins, hand percussion instruments, rain sticks, drum sets. I mean, it's I, I don't even know at this point until first of all, we're going to pick the songs from the CDs we have, and we're going to create an hour and 15-minute performance. And we're hoping that we can open maybe for some really big stuff. We've already been offered to do some things. We've had to turn it down. I'm not going to say from who or by who because I don't want to commit to that. But big players.
Would you say that your physical preparation for a tour is very different from going into the recording studio? Is it a whole different level?
Whole different level. Yeah, it's very different. You're trying to produce something maybe that you did on CD, and you're sitting on what they call a Hollywood stage. Basically, you're all set up live, and you're trying to hear each other. It's hard to do. And with some of this music, I need the other thing I didn't bring, I need at least 2 to 3 keyboard players.
At least 2 to 3 keyboardists.
Yeah, I need a workstation. I need a guy that just plays 9-foot grand piano.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't tour with that piano, do you?
Well, where we go, they got to have a piano.
They got to have a piano. Sure.
Contract, man. I want an 8-foot Yamaha. If it's not there, I can't come.
Is there a song that you have played over time that is your favorite to play live?
The jazz stuff, plenty of them. I don't know. For this music, it's really different now. I know what I think is going to be pretty comfortable off the CDs that are out that we're going to have a good time for. We're going to make sure things upbeat. It's just a few maybe laid back things. Some of the cuts on some of these CDs are really jazz tunes, strictly jazz tunes when you listen to them. And when you read the write-ups, we've been blessed by having good write-ups, from good critics. I don't know if Bill sends you those write-ups, but
I think I have read a few of them. Yeah, sure. No, they're very good. Your reviews are very well deserved.
Yeah, we're happy with what the critics are saying. And we were shocked that we were put up for the new nomination or the review from the NARAS. I forgot what the category was.
Well, there was one for video, best music video, and one for best contemporary jazz album.
That's what, yeah. So we were, which is cool. That's cool.
Sure it is.
I say, I don't care about winning. I just think as long as somebody's recognizing, that's nice. That Freedom video for Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Seen that?
I have seen it.
Yeah, that was assembled by us getting permission from several journalists to use photojournalists.
I see.
To use those photographs. I wasn't really that happy with it. The song Freedom was written before the Ukraine idea came in. But, as we listened to it, that marching sound and that drum sound. And I created a tune, Freedom, because I thought of the American Revolutionary War.
And you could relate that quite easily to what's going on in Ukraine.
That's what happened automatically, when we said that. And so I forgot who it was. One of my players said, "Hey, Mike, man, maybe what can we do with this?" And I think it was either Bill or somebody got all in their head like, "Yeah, let's pull some Ukraine war footage. We'll slap it together and see what happens." And so we did. We put it all together, and I sent the picture file with the permission slips, all that stuff. It must have been, I don't know, 200 photos to get you through that tune. And some of them are what they call stock photos.
Of course.
Well, stock photos are free to be used by anybody, but we had to make sure. So I gave it to Bill on a timeline, and I said, do some blending. I wasn't happy with the blending of it.
What do you mean by blending?
Like one image coming out of the other.
Oh, dissolving.
Yeah, but I can even do better than what they did in regards to dissolving. How one would come out, one would go in, but there's ways that you could filter through. They could have did a little bit more, but I think the essence of it came across when you watch it and you hear the music.
I think part of it is the emotion of what it's being laid in against.
Yeah, I felt bad about looking at some of those images. Those are personal images of grief. Some of it just bothers me.
Well, one can only hope that the music gives some people some solace. That's all.
We tried to. I think it was sent to the American embassy and the Ukraine embassy. I don't know what they'll do with it. Maybe they can promote funding or something. I don't know. Hope something good, you know, out of this mess. And now we have a new mess.
We do indeed, which is mind-boggling. All of the whole world is in a little bit of a what the British like to call a spot of bother at this moment. So
Absolutely.
I've been having a really fascinating conversation, my second conversation on StoryBeat with the great flutist Michael Mason, and you have shared some story with us in the last show, but I'm wondering if you have another story that you can share that's either weird, quirky, offbeat, strange, or maybe just plain funny from all your experiences.
I can't really isolate too. I can tell you this: we've got some pretty funny characters in these musicians, you know. So I'll create a piece of music. I think Danny Gessling is one of the funniest guys. I'll write a piece of music, and he'll come up with just an item. You know, I'll be like recording, and we'd be setting it up, doing the rough draft, and he'd like going, you know what, Mike? You know what this reminds me of? A Doris Day movie.
Doris
And I'd be
Day.
like, I go, what? What in the yeah, do you know what? Or I Love Lucy, or some off the wall thing. Like he'd have like one tune, he'd be like a Darth Vader guy. He'd walk around the studio as it was going on, you know, the music, and you know, a bunch of us musicians look at him going, you're crazy. This guy's nuts. And that's what he would do. He would just create animations for us, like nothing that even pertained to the way I felt when I wrote this thing. You know what I mean? So he ends up lightening up sometimes, because a lot of times, a lot of takes, like especially flute playing. I'll do a solo 50 times.
Wow. That's got to take, is it, I assume that's days.
No, that's it'll be in one day session. We'll take breaks, but I'll keep going at it and going at it until I get whatever. And then he'll come downstairs and he'll say, "Hey, man, you know what the hell's wrong with your lip today? Why don't you straighten up?" And I'm like, "Dude," or I'll try to be doing keyboard work, and he'll like go, "Oh, I can see we got another day of nothing but bumble. I can't even say bumble, fuck, freaking fingers. What the hell, man? Aren't you practicing your piano?" I go, "I don't play piano."
You basically have fat fingers on those days, yeah?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, no. Sometimes we have to. I'll put it down, and then Dave Rice comes in. You know, one of our pianists, and he'll go, "Yeah, Mike, you got to put the seventh on top." You know, well, they're going, "I don't. Why can't you just use what I got?" Now I'm going to create the seventh, and most of the time it's better. And you know, Danny would just sit there back going, "You see, you need to go back to school, dude." That's what you do. You know? Go back to school.
Well, this is helping to explain why you also keep doing this is it's fun for you. It's not
Oh, it's a lot
work.
of fun. No, this is not work. This is joy.
And
Joy.
I think that that is very obvious when you listen to the songs. It is joyful, and
Yeah.
quite delightful to listen to. So, last question for you today, then, Michael. You've given us all kinds of very interesting things to ponder throughout this episode and throughout the first
I,
one as
I
well.
bet.
But I'm wondering, do you have a solid piece of advice beyond maybe what we've heard before that you like to give to people who are starting out in the business, or maybe someone who's in a little bit and trying to get to that next level? What can you say to them?
If you're an instrumentalist, meaning that you chose an instrument that you love or are passionate about, it's a question of dedication. You know, make sure that that's something you want to do, and it'll take you where you want to go as long as you provide the instrument, the diligence of your soul, not saying that everything's got to be right, everything's got to be right every day. There's no such thing as perfection, but just provide the love of the instrument. If you really love it, the diligence of your soul, and put yourself into that thing. If you're a composer, that's going to take a little bit longer. It's going to take a long time, because a composer comes from an instrument. Bernstein, Chopin, they played piano and they practiced and practiced and practiced. Mozart, you know, you got to get the instrument in order for you to become a composer, because you do have to understand musical scales. You have to understand the circle of fifths and composing and everything else. You have to go to school. Don't The only thing I miss is dropping out too early, never getting my master's, you know. But I was a street musician. Students don't have to do that anymore. Instrument, all of a sudden from the instrument, you become a composer. And when you're playing with other people, you start to think of how to compose. So that's another ball game. You know what? Miles always said, man, live a life and then play a note,
Live a life and then play a note.
and you'll hear the difference.
Well, I think that's extraordinary.
Yeah, it's something I picked up from him. I just elaborate on it. I said, you know what? Live a life from the first note you played, then live a life and play that note again 30 years later.
Well, I don't think missing school has hurt you at all.
A lot. There's a lot of us from the 60s and 70s that just jumped school.
Well, you were
No,
more
we all
fascinated
did.
by playing an instrument than you were by being in class.
Now, formal training is had to be done. Don't get me wrong. And that's another thing we can tell people out there. You have to get the formal training. Don't decide that you're just gonna, yeah, I don't need school at all. No, there's no way. There's no way you're gonna be cutting it as an artist if you can't know that. You got to know. You got to have music school.
Well, I think that that's extremely wise advice, and it comes from a lot of years of doing this and being able to have what can only best be described as real perspective, the perspective of distance. And I think that that's phenomenal advice. And yeah, I think schooling and practice and your diligence is all on display in the work that you present.
That is your life, if that's what you want to do. And it's not a rich life. It is a pauperous life.
Did you say
It,
pauperous?
Pulperous.
Oh,
I mean,
pulperous.
pulperous. It's there's no money unless you happen to be the lucky ones. We all dream about being the lucky ones, but you're not going to be, Bruno Mars or Taylor Swift here. No,
Well, you wouldn't keep doing it if you
you
didn't
got to
love
do
it.
it for the love of it.
You got to do it for the love of it, for sure. Michael Mason, this has been just a fantastic hour on StoryBeat, and I cannot thank you enough for your second appearance on this show and for all the great music that you keep turning out. Thank you so much.
When I'm in Pittsburgh, I'm looking you up. We are. We're going to be
And
knocking on your door.
And now, as promised, as we've mentioned, Michael has gifted us with some absolutely exquisite music to end the show. So please sit back and enjoy Michael Mason's wonderful composition, Freedom, from his album Impermanence. And as we've spoken about, Freedom is a tribute to the people of Ukraine. And so we've come to the end of today's Story Beat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great Story Beat episodes to you. Story Beat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.